pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Jackie, can you call the roll, please?
Yes, Mayor. Mayor Evans,
Here.
Vice Mayor Russell,
Here.
Mr. Haskins.
Here.
Mr. Mitchell.
Here.
Ms. Cooper.
Here.
Mr. Redmond.
Present.
Ms. Chamberlain.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we have the proceedings to approve. I have a motion to approve the special meeting proceedings, the work session from April 19th. So moved.
Second.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes.
Ms. Cooper.
Yes.
Ms. Russell.
Yes.
Mr. Redmond.
Abstain.
Ms. Chamberlain.
Yes.
Mr. Haskins.
Yes.
Ms. Evans.
Yes. And do I have a motion to approve the regular council meeting minutes from April 19th? So moved. Second.
Ms. Evans.
Yes.
Mr. Haskins.
Yes.
Ms. Chamberlain.
Yes.
Mr. Redmond.
Abstain.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes.
Ms. Cooper.
Yes.
Ms. Russell.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, and we have correspondence, Jackie?
Yes. From the Ohio Division of Liquor Control regarding Cobalt Station LLC, 222 Wooster Pike, Milford, Ohio, 45150. It is for, if we would like to have a hearing for them to have a Trex for their business.
Move to do nothing on,
Okay,
Second?
Second.
okay. Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Ms. Russell?
yes.
Mr. Redmond?
Yes.
Ms. Chamberlain?
Yes.
Mr. Haskins?
Yes.
Ms. Evans?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we have financial statements. You should have all received the March 2022 financial report. Do I have a motion to receive those? So moved.
Second,
Mr. Redmond?
Yes.
Ms. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Haskins?
Yes.
Ms. Chamberlain?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Ms. Russell?
yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And that moves us to standing committee reports. Vice Mayor Russell, do you have administrative services? Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot public comments. Anyone from the public want to make a comment? All right, that moves us to committee reports. Ms. Russell, thank you.
Oh, my goodness, I thought I had more time. Chris,
This was a long meeting.
starting to read this. The Administrative Service Committee was held on May 4th at 4:30. Present was myself, Lisa Evans, and Kim Chamberlain. Staff, City Manager Michael Doss, Finance Director Pat Worthland, Executive Assistant Jackie Bain. We had visitors Brad Rue of Dinsmore and Shoal, Mark Lauer, Jim Montag, Matt Damaris, Damian Nelson, Lori Howland, Tim Howland, Dino Pell, and Becky Linzer, Claire Oliver. The proceedings, we need updated minutes. Oh, I guess we adopted the meeting or approved the meeting from April the 18th. So we began the discussion of the proposed legislation regarding financing of the Five Points Landing Park. Finance Director Pat Worthland discussed with the committee a $2.6 million bond issue for Five Points Landing Park. The generous residents of Milford voted a $3 million 5-year tax levy to develop Phase 1 of Five Points Landing Park. So here's the timeline. 2021, voters passed the levy via ballot. 2022, county assesses the property values. 2022 to 2023, city constructs and pays for the park. 2023 to 2027, city collects the levy revenue over 5 years. Amounts up for discussion were the following: a $2.8 million levy 5-year revenue stream, a $2.8 million project cost, a $2.6 million financing to jumpstart the project. The staff recommended a $2.6 million 5-year bond to jumpstart the project to take advantage of the low interest rates and to tie down escalating building material cost. Brad Rue of Dinsmore and Shoal attended the meeting to discuss the bond specifics and to answer any questions. So if all goes according to plan, the city would close on May 30th and then have 5 months of construction before winter months. Spring of 2023 would wrap it up with a beautiful park to showcase our amazing city. Thank you to our Milford voters. The committee agreed to recommend that the law director draft an ordinance providing for the issuance of limited tax general obligation bonds in one or more series in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $2.6 million by the city of Milford, Clermont, and Hamilton counties, Ohio, for the purpose of acquiring, constructing, and equipping 5 Points Landing, all within the city, and declaring an emergency.
Second. Excuse me, second.
Ms. Russell?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Redmond?
Yes.
Ms. Chamberlain?
Yes.
Ms. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Haskins?
Yes.
Creation, let's see, our next topic was the creation of the Park Levy Fund. The Finance Director, Pat Worthland, discussed with the committee a $2.8 million Park Levy Fund, and that the first step is to set up a new fund in the city's accounting system. This requires a council ordinance. The committee agreed to recommend that the law director prepare an ordinance authorizing the creation of the Park Levy Fund number 208 and declaring an emergency.
Second.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Ms. Russell?
Yes.
Mr. Redmond?
Yes.
Ms. Chamberlain?
Yes.
Mr. Haskins? Evans?
Yes.
Then an agreement with Mcgowan Governmental Underwriters for property and casualty insurance for the city of Milford. Finance Director Pat Worthland recommended that the staff continue its engagement with Mcgowan Governmental Underwriters for property and casualty insurance for the 2022 and 2023 coverage period. The coverage includes buildings, vehicles, equipment, contents, cyber, and accidents that cause injury or damage. The current renewal of $71,686 increased by $9,000 from the 2021 renewal amount due to the marked increase in cyber coverage, a 46% 5-year loss ratio, and high inflationary rate increases. Please note that Mcgowan, as an agent to the city, bids the contracts out to various insurers. In 2021, we reviewed Ohio Plan, a popular P&C state pool, as an alternative. The committee agreed to recommend that the law director prepare an ordinance authorizing an agreement with the Mcgowan Governmental Underwriters for property and casualty insurance in the amount of $71,686 for the period May 13th, 2022 to May 13th, 2023.
Second.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Evans?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Haskins?
Yes.
Ms. Russell?
Yes.
Ms. Chamberlain?
Yes.
Mr. Redmond?
Yes.
Next, we had a discussion on compensation of the finance director, our wonderful finance director, Pat Worthland. City Manager Michael Doss requested a pay increase of $7,500 for Pat Worthland, who believed is a true asset to the city as finance director. She assists our team with navigating the city through a pandemic and current inflation. The retirement of Pam Hallbrook has cast a light on the importance of surrounding the city with experienced and well-qualified individuals to further the continuity of our goals and missions and objectives. The committee agreed to recommend that the law director prepare an ordinance authorizing the compensation increase of $7,500 for the finance director, Pat Worthland.
Second.
Ms. Russell?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Redmond?
Yes.
Ms. Chamberlain?
Yes.
Mr. Haskins?
Yes.
Ms. Evans?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Then we discussed the consideration of adopting Juneteenth holiday observations. City Manager Michael Doss discussed consideration to adopt June 19th as a recognized holiday in the city. Juneteenth is a federal holiday in the United States, with several neighboring communities and Clermont County recognizing Juneteenth as a holiday for their employees. The adoption of this as a recognized holiday will require a resolution. The committee agreed to recommend that the law director prepare a resolution recognizing June 19th as Juneteenth as the recognized holiday in the city.
Second?
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Ms. Russell,
Yes.
Mr. Redmond,
Yes.
Ms. Chamberlain,
Yes.
Mr. Haskins,
Yes.
Ms. Evans.
Yes.
Then we have the discussion regarding proposed legislation on short-term rentals and regulations. I read the 3-page proposed short-term rental property information out loud. Ms. Evans had questions regarding one of the number 9 on the document. Will there be a fire inspection included with each request for a permit? Mr. Doss said the information should be placed into the ordinance information as part of the permit process and reviewed by the fire department as well. Ms. Evans also asked if the age of 21, as noted on number 11, should be changed from 21 years of age to a higher age, possibly 25 years old. I stated that she thought that the permit, I stated that the permit fee should probably be a little higher than $100 that was proposed, to possibly $250, and that the consecutive days to be changed from 30 to 90 days. Mr. Doss explained that the Airbnb is already addressed in an existing ordinance. Mr. Doss mentioned that if 3 or more complaints in a calendar year, it could revoke the permit, and to also include 3 phone calls for service from the police. Then the permit would be permanently revoked, and they would no longer operate as a short-term rental property. Ms. Chamberlain stated that all rules should apply to short-term rental, whether they are residential or commercial. The owner-occupied should not apply if the property is in a commercial zone based on our identified zoning information within the city. I stated there must be changes made to this information before the committee can move this forward. There was a lot of participation, and we had a lot of comments from the people that attended, so I'm not going to read them. So if anyone is interested in getting more information on what kind of comments, they can contact Jackie Bain, and she has the documentation, the minutes of that meeting. Mr. Manier will then draft the revised rules and regulations that will be processed in another committee meeting between the next week sometime. So then we got on to a discussion regarding the Riverside Park Shelter to possibly rename it. City Manager Michael Doss discussed how the City of Milford, along with the Milford Miami Township Chamber of Commerce, would like to rename and dedicate Riverside Park Shelter in honor of Mr. Wayne Floria. Mr. Wayne was Mr. Wayne, is that what everybody called him, Mr. Wayne? I don't remember calling him Mr. Wayne. Was co-founder of Milford Chamber of Commerce, as well as a member for more than 60 years, and served as president for at least 10 of those years. He was well respected in this community. The ceremony for this dedication to be held during Frontier Days event this year. So the committee agreed to have the Riverside Park Shelter dedicated to and renamed in honor of Mr. Wayne Donald Floria. And there'd be, second.
Oh, second.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Ms. Russell,
Yes.
Mr. Redmond,
Yes.
Ms. Chamberlain,
Yes.
Mr. Haskins,
Yes.
Ms. Evans.
Yes.
So there will be no further business. The meeting adjourned at 6:44.
All right, thank you, Ms. Russell. That was a long meeting. That moves us to the city manager report.
Thank you, Mayor. A few updates for you this evening. The Wallace Water Tower Engineering and Design. The city continues to work with Branstetter Carroll on finalizing engineering, design, and scope services for the Wallace Water Tower project. By the time we get those services underway, we'll probably be approaching council about engineering and design services for the 2 water lines through Ohio Public Works Commission and engineering services for that as well. 5 Points Landing update. The city intends to publicly advertise and bid for engineering, architectural, and project management services related to the park project. So we'll be approaching council probably in the June meeting about approval for that. SWOR waste and recycling bids. The city partners with the Center for Local Government. We are part of a consortium, if you will, of municipalities and some townships for our waste collection and recycling. The Center for Local Government actually bids our waste collection and recycling out every few years. The thought of that is everybody in a consortium, in a group, we get a better rate. So now's the time to do that. Those bids have been out for about a month, and were actually received today. I have an email waiting on me with a pretty large document to go over with the CLG. We will be meeting with the CLG and our consortium over the next couple weeks to go through the bids and come back and make a recommendation at a later date for that. Again, this is the waste collection and recycling for the entire city that the city contracts with, and then we bill our residents accordingly. Another notice of event, the city is partnering with Milford's Kiwanis Club and the Little Miami Brewing Company on a potential Oktoberfest, AUG, Oktoberfest, which would be in August. I'm hoping to have a little bit more information to follow on this potential event in the next month. Standing committees, there are no standing committee meetings at this time, although we do have an administrative services meeting that will be coming up to continue discussion of the short-term rentals. So be looking out for that. And then a reminder, our next city council meeting is May 17th at 7 o'clock. And then after that, we'll go to our once-a-month meetings as scheduled, unless there's a need for an additional month, like an additional meeting in one of those months. We'll go to our summer schedule. That's all I have at this time.
Thank you very much. That brings us to Chief Mills.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm still working on the April monthly report, but I did want to make one last final pitch in terms of recruiting. Remind the public that we are still hiring for 2 vacancies this year. You can visit our Facebook page or the city's website at www.milfordohio.org and navigate over to the police department homepage, and down at the bottom of the sub-menu you can find all the documents and information about this selection process. I also want to mention that we just rotated shifts, so you might see some fresh faces, some vampires that have been on night shift for the past 4 to 8 months are now out patrolling on day shift. So we look forward to seeing some of those night shift officers around in the daytime now.
How do they adjust to that?
It takes a while.
I would imagine it
It's
would.
a good couple weeks, sometimes a month, to get truly
Yikes.
acclimated. So
Yeah.
I probably only do it 3 times a year.
That's good. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That brings us to Fire and EMS, District Chief Miller.
Hello. Clermont County's monthly weather siren test, which was supposed to have been done yesterday, was actually completed today. It was discovered yesterday that a lightning had damaged the main controlling unit in Batavia. So this discovery emphasizes why we do those tests monthly. Our units here in Milford have preventative maintenance performed every April, so they are working correctly as they should.
The kids at school were a little confused.
I imagine. Yeah, that one day
panicked.
will really mess you up.
Yes.
Usually my mom calls me. 4 members received Blue Card Hazard Zone Management certification after completing training, which was paid for by FEMA assistance to firefighters grant. Most of our full-time staff has been through that training, and all of our officers have been through that training as well. Firefighters Alex Baird and Wes Hartoin are participating in a 5-day rescue series course over in Loveland with specific focus on rope rescues. Chief Baird, District Chief Nickel, and myself completed a 2021 through 2022 Leadership Academy today. We all received a plaque similar to this one. I brought Chief Baird's since he wasn't here today.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Nice.
This is a 9-month program that focuses on developing expectations, self-awareness, handling complex personnel difficulties, and completing high-level staff work that benefits the organization. Leaders from Loveland, Mason, Goshen, Medina Indian Hill, Blue Ash, and Milford all participated in this program.
Sounds like a great course.
And that is all I have.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your
Thank you.
coursework. All right, that brings us to council comments. Anyone on council like to make a comment?
I would. On behalf of council and the city, I wanted to thank Life Change Church, which is located at 701 Chamber Drive. They were instrumental in the successful Easter extravaganza event that we had. The church and the congregation were able to donate 8,000 candy-filled eggs that were on, and they were on hand during the Easter egg hunt to help things move, as well as staying after to help tear down. They went above and beyond to help make this event a great success. And also on April 23rd, we had approximately 30 volunteers in the city. I know there were a bunch more down at Target and movie theaters, do spring litter cleanup and totally taking care of the downtown area and then up to McDonald's. And also we had free shred day that day, and that was a great success.
Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, that brings us to new business, discussion, appointment of Milford CIC board member. On recommendation from Mr. Doss, I would like to recommend that we appoint Chief Mark Baird to the committee.
Second?
Kim,
Do I have a second? Oh, you did.
yeah,
Okay, I'm
second.
sorry. Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Ms. Russell?
Yes.
Mr. Redmond?
Yes.
Ms. Chamberlain?
Yes.
Mr. Haskins? Ms. Evans?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hopefully Chief Baird knows about that.
I was going to say, he does know about this, right?
He does.
Oh.
Let him know about that, Miles. All right, that brings us to ordinances and resolution. Mr. Doss?
Yes,
You're up.
here we go. Kids gather around. I'm gonna read. So, this is ordinance 22-142, an ordinance authorizing an agreement with Mcgowan Government or Underwriters for property and casualty insurance for the city of Milford. Now, therefore, be it ordained by the council of the municipality of Milford, Ohio, Section 1, the council of the city of Milford hereby authorizes the city manager to enter into and execute an agreement with Mcgowan Government or Underwriters for the provision of property and casualty insurance for the city of Milford from May 13th, 2022 to May 13th, 2023 for the contract amount of $71,686.00. The terms and conditions of the agreement are incorporated herein and referenced pursuant to and in accordance with Section 12.03 of the Milford City Charter. Section 2, pursuant to and in accordance with Section 12.05 of the Milford City Charter, this ordinance shall become effective immediately upon its passage by City Council.
Move to suspend the rules and read by title only?
Second?
Mr. Redmond?
Yes.
Ms. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Haskins?
Yes.
Ms. Chamberlain?
Yes.
Ms. Russell?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Ordinance 22-142, an ordinance authorizing an agreement with Mcgowan Government or Underwriters for property and casualty insurance for the city of Milford.
Motion to adopt?
Second?
Ms. Russell?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Redmond?
Yes.
Ms. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Haskins?
Yes.
Ms. Chamberlain?
Yes.
Ordinance 22-143, an ordinance establishing the Park Levy Fund number 208. Whereas in November of 2021, the city of Milford voted for a 5-year, 3 mil tax levy for park and recreational purposes, and whereas the levy was necessary for the purpose of providing for the continuing provision, improvement, and maintenance of the city of Milford parks and recreational amenities and facilities, and whereas the Ohio Revised Code, Section 5705.09, authorizes a subdivision to establish a separate fund for each class of revenue derived from a source other than general property tax, and whereas the Ohio Revised Code, Section 5705.12 requires the taxing authority of a subdivision to establish, with the approval of the Auditor of State, a separate fund for monies derived from specific sources other than the general property tax. Now therefore be it ordained by the Council of the Municipality of Milford, Ohio, Section 1, the Council of the City of Milford hereby authorizes the City Finance Director to establish a Park Levy Fund number 208 to separately account for any funds received through the 2021 5-year 3 mil tax levy. Section 2, pursuant to and in accordance with Section 12.05 of the Milford City Charter, this ordinance shall become effective immediately upon its passage by City Council.
Move to suspend the rules and read by title only?
Second?
Ms. Russell?
Yes.
Mr. Haskins?
Yes.
Ms. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Redmond?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Chamberlain?
Yes.
Ordinance 22-143, an ordinance establishing the Park Levy Fund number 208.
Motion to adopt?
Second?
Ms. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Haskins?
Yes.
Ms. Chamberlain?
Yes.
Mr. Redmond?
Yes.
Ms. Russell?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Okay, so this ordinance, as we know with other bonds that we've went and received for financing, this ordinance has to be read in its entirety. So here we go. Ordinance 22-144, an ordinance providing for the issuance of limited tax general obligation bonds in one or more series in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $2,600,000 by the City of Milford, Clermont, and Hamilton Counties, Ohio, for the purpose of acquiring, constructing, and equipping 5 Points Landing and all within the city, and declaring an emergency. Whereas this council of the City of Milford, Ohio, the issuer, has requested the city manager as fiscal officer to certify the maximum maturity of the bond anticipation notes or the bonds herein referred to and the bonds herein authorized, and such fiscal officer has estimated the life of the project as defined herein as at least 5 years, and certified the maximum maturity of the bonds as 15 years, and of the notes to be issued in anticipation thereof as 15 years. And whereas this council desires to address public health, safety, welfare, and convenience needs within the jurisdiction of the issuer, including without limitation the acquisition, construction, and equipping of 5 Points Landing, which includes without limitation an open entertainment area for outdoor concerts, public art, movies, theater, performances, and exercise activities, restrooms and concession facilities, multiple splash fountains, a farmer's market area, a dog park, an open-air dining area, green space, walking paths, landscaping, and park areas, collectively the project. And whereas the issuer desires to provide the issuance of park improvement limited tax general obligation bonds in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $2,600,000 and in one or more series in order to provide for the acquisition, construction, and equipping of the project in a timely manner. Now for there it be ordained by the City Council, by the Council of the City of Milford, Clermont, in Hamilton County, Ohio, 3/4 of the members of the elected thereto concurring, Section 1, that it is necessary to issue limited tax general obligation bonds of the issuer in a principal amount not to exceed $2,600,000 for the purpose of acquiring, constructing, and equipping the project and paying certain costs of the issuance, all under the authority of the general laws of the state of Ohio, and in particular, Chapter 133 of the Ohio Revised Code. The cost of the issuance may but shall not require to be paid from the proceeds of the bond. The bond shall mature and may be subject to mandatory sinking fund redemption and or optional redemption, and shall bear interest at such rate of interest per annum that is not to exceed 4% per annum, all as determined in the certificate of award. Section 2, that is hereby defined that the bonds in the principal amount not to exceed $2,600,000 shall be issued and used for the purposes aforesaid. The bonds shall be dated and a date set forth in the certificate of award and in accordance with the terms conclusively determined by the city manager and the director of finance, or his or her respective authorized designee. In the event the city manager or the director of finance is unable to execute the certificate of award, the certificate of award shall be signed by the city manager or the director of finance or one or both of their designees without further action of this council, and the bond shall bear interest at a rate or at rate set forth in the certificate of award, shall be payable annually or semi-annually or otherwise set forth in the certificate of award until the principal amount has been paid, and shall have final maturity date consistent with the date set forth in the certificate of award. The certificate of award shall also specifically pay the agent or the registrar in connection with the bonds mandatory, special, and/or optional redemption provisions, denominations, purchases, or sell information, and other terms that are consistent with the purpose of this ordinance in sections 133.21, 133.23, and/or 133.25 of the Ohio Revised Code. The certificate of award shall be incorporated into this ordinance and referenced by, made part of, without any further action by this council. The bonds shall be numbered R1 and upward and shall be issued in registered form in the name of an original purchaser and the name of the depository, such as the Depository Trust Company, as applicable. The certificate of award shall set forth any and all terms not specifically set forth herein regarding the sale, pricing, payment, tax status, number of series bonds, and related financing terms of the bonds. Section 3, that the bonds shall be executed by the city manager and the director of finance and may, but shall not be required to, bear the corporate seal of the issuer, provided that the bonds shall bear the manual authenticating signature of the authorized representative of the paying agent and register. The signature of the city manager and the director of finance may be facsimile signatures. The city manager and the finance director are also authorized to take all other action required in connection with the issuance of the sale of bonds. The bonds shall be designated Park Improvement Limited Tax General Obligation Bonds, Series 2022, and may be issued in one or more series of bonds or issued in conjunction with other series of bonds and may be consolidated into a series of bonds. The bonds shall be payable at the office of the paying agent and registrar as provided in the certificate of award, and shall express upon their faces the purpose for which they are issued, and that they are issued in pursuance with the Uniform Public Securities Law of the Ohio Revised Code and this ordinance. Section 4, that for the payment of the bonds and interest therein, the full faith, credit, and revenues of the issuer shall hereby irrevocably pledge, and for the purpose of providing the necessary funds to pay the interest on the foregoing issue of bonds promptly, and as the same falls due, and also to provide funds sufficient to discharge the bonds at maturity, and shall be in and hereby levied on all taxable property of the issuer, in addition to all other taxes. A direct tax annually during the period of bonds are to run inside of the limitations of Section 2 of Article 12 of the Constitution of Ohio, which shall be sufficient in the amount to provide the payments of the interest upon the bonds when and as the same falls due, and to provide for the retirement, discharge of the principal of the bonds at maturity. Said tax shall be and is hereby ordered, computed, certified, levied, and extended upon the tax duplicate and collected by the same officers in the same manner and at the same time that the taxes for general purposes for each of the said years are certified, extended, and collected. Said tax shall be before and in preference to all other items and for the full amount thereof. The funds derived from said tax levied hereby required shall be placed in a separate and distinct fund, which together with all interest collected on the same shall be irrevocably pledged for the payment of interest and principal of the bonds when and as the same fall due, provided, however, to the extent that each year other available funds, including without limitation, available funds derived from the issuer's park levy passed on November 2nd, 2021, are appropriated and applied to the payment of the principal and interest of the bonds. The amount of such tax shall be reduced by the amount of said funds so appropriated and applied to such payment. Section 5, that the issuer hereby acknowledges that a competitive process was utilized in order to competitively solicit interest rates and other relevant terms in connection with the bonds. The bonds shall be sold at not less than 97% of the par amount of the bonds plus accrued interest, if any, to the Huntington National Bank in accordance with this offer to purchase the bonds unless such financial institution is unable to fulfill its obligations to purchase the bonds, in which case the certificate of award may be utilized to designate the award the bonds to another financial institution. The proceeds from the sale of the bonds, except the premium and accrued interest, shall be used for the acquisition, construction, and equipping of the project and pay for any cost of the issuance and for no other purpose, and any premium may be used to pay cost of the issuance, and any remaining amount of the premium or accrued interest shall be transferred to the bond retirement fund of the issuer to be applied to the payment of the principal of and interest of the bonds in a manner provided by law. Section 6, that to the extent that the bonds are tax-exempt obligations of the issuer, this council, for and on behalf of the issuer, shall hereby covenants that it will restrict the use of the proceeds of the bonds hereby authorized in such manner and to such extent, if any, and take such other action as may be necessary after taking into account reasonable expectations at the time the debt is incurred, so that they will not constitute obligations, the interest on which is subject to federal income tax or arbitrage bonds under Section 103B2 and 148 of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986, as amended, and the regulations prescribed thereunder. The city manager or the other officer having responsibility with respect to the issuance of bonds is authorized and directed, as necessary by law, to give an appropriate certificate on behalf of the issuer on the date of the delivery of bonds for the inclusion in the transcript of proceedings set forth the facts, estimates, and circumstances and reasonable expectations pertaining to the use of the proceeds thereof, and the provisions of said Sections 103B2 and 148 and regulations thereunder. The bonds are hereby designated qualified tax-exempt obligations for the purpose of Section 265B3 of the Code, which designation may be amended pursuant to the terms of the Certificate of Award without further action by this council. To the extent that the bonds are issued in calendar year 2022, this council does not reasonably anticipate issuing more than $10 million of qualified tax-exempt obligations during calendar year 2022. Section 7, that the issuer does not anticipate that it will be necessary to utilize a preliminary or final official statement in order to market and sell the bonds. However, to the extent the issuer or its legal counsel determines that it is necessary to do so, the issuer is hereby authorized to prepare a preliminary official statement and a final official statement in order to market and sell the bonds. Any such preliminary official statement shall be deemed final by the city manager and the director of finance prior to the dissemination of the bonds in accordance with SEC Rule 15C2-12, in addition to extent deemed necessary by the issuer or its legal counsel. The issuer is hereby authorized to execute a continuing disclosure certificate in conjunction with the requirements of the rule. Section 8, that the city manager, the mayor, and/or director of finance, individually or in any combination, are hereby authorized to take necessary action in order to execute the requisite closing agreements, certificates, and/or documents necessary to provide for the sale, issuance, and delivery of the bonds in a timely and efficient manner. And further, to the extent that it is deemed necessary by law, bond counsel and/or the law director, then other members of council, the clerk of council, and/or other administrative officers of the issuer, as appropriate, are also hereby authorized to take any necessary action in order to provide for the issuance, sale, and delivery of bonds in a timely and effective manner, provided that any such action shall not be contrary to the applicable law. Section 9, that this council hereby engages Dinsmore & Shoal LLP to serve as bond counsel to the issuer in conjunction with the issuance, sale, and delivery of bonds. And further, the city manager is authorized to execute an engagement letter with such firm to memorialize such engagement. Section 10, that the clerk of council is hereby directed to forward a certified copy of this ordinance to the county auditors of Clermont and Hamilton counties, Ohio. Section 11, that it is found and determined that all formal actions of this council concerning and relating to the adoption of this ordinance were adopted in an open meeting of this council, and that all deliberations of this council and any of its committees that resulted in such formal action or in meetings open to the public in compliance with all legal requirements, including Section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. Section 12, that this ordinance is hereby declared to be an emergency measure necessary for the immediate preservation of public peace, health, welfare, and safety of the inhabitants of the issuer, which requires the immediate issuance of bonds in order to provide for the timely financing of the project without incurring further delay or expense, and all in accordance with and in furtherance of the current development plan of the issuer. This ordinance shall take effect immediately upon adoption.
Move to suspend the rules and read by title only.
Thank you.
Second.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Ms. Russell,
Yes.
Mr. Redmond,
Yes.
Ms. Chamberlain,
Yes.
Mr. Haskins,
Yes.
Ms. Evans.
Yes.
Ordinance number 22-144, an ordinance providing for the issuance of limited tax general obligation bonds in one or more series in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $2,600,000 by the City of Milford, Clermont, and Hamilton Counties, Ohio, for the purpose of acquiring, constructing, and equipping Five Points Landing, all within the city, and declaring an emergency.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Ms. Russell,
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Redmond,
Yes.
Ms. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Chamberlain,
Yes.
Mr. Haskins.
Yes.
All right, a little easier. Ordinance 22-145, an ordinance establishing the salary of the finance director, wow, that's weird. Now therefore, be it ordained by the Council of the Municipality of Milford, Ohio, Section 1, pursuant to and in accordance with Section 5.02 of the Milford City Charter, the Council of the City of Milford hereby establishes the annual salary of the finance director, Pat Worthland, at $100,122.40, retroactive to May 2nd, 2022. Section 2, pursuant to and in accordance with Section 12.05 of the Milford City Charter, this ordinance shall become effective immediately upon its passage by City Council.
Move to suspend the rules and read by title only.
Second.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Haskins.
Yes.
Ms. Evans.
Yes.
Ms. Chamberlain,
Yes.
Mr. Redmond,
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Russell.
Yes.
Ordinance 22-145, an ordinance establishing the salary of the finance director.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Ms. Russell,
Yes.
Mr. Redmond,
Yes.
Ms. Chamberlain,
Yes.
Mr. Haskins,
Yes.
Ms. Evans.
Yes.
Resolution number 22-633, a resolution recognizing Juneteenth as a holiday in the city of Milford, Ohio. Whereas more than 130 years ago, Juneteenth National Freedom Day has been the oldest and only African-American holiday observed in the United States, and whereas Juneteenth commemorates the announcement of the abolition of slavery, which occurred in Galveston, Texas on June 19, 1865, and whereas news of the end of slavery did not reach the frontier areas of the United States, in particular the state of Texas and other southwestern states, until months after the conclusion of the Civil War, more than 2.5 years after President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863, and whereas on June 19, 1865, Union soldiers led by Major General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas, with news that the Civil War had ended and that the enslaved were free, and whereas Juneteenth recognizes the day all remaining slaves were freed, and whereas many states recognize Juneteenth as a state holiday, including Ohio, now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the City of Milford, Ohio recognizes June 19th, also known as Juneteenth, as a city holiday.
Motion to adopt.
Mr. Redmond,
Yes.
Ms. Chamberlain,
Yes.
Ms. Evans,
Yes.
Mr. Haskins,
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Ms. Russell.
Yes.
All right, thank you. I need a drink after that. Is there any other old business to discuss? If not, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Russell?
Yes.
Mr. Haskins?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Redmond?
Yes.
Ms. Chamberlain?
Yes.
All right, thank you, everyone.